Hey guys, how's it going? It's Blaze, back with some more One Piece TCG content for you. Today, I wanted to take some time just because we've got OP17 coming up pretty damn soon now. It's a couple weeks away, right around the corner, and I have had some hands-on time with some of the decks, and I thought it would just be kind of fun to sort of rank where I see them sitting, just kind of generally. Now, let me be very clear, this is a super provisional list. We don't really know how the meta is going to work out or anything until we get all the cards, we see people build different variations of the decks and actually try them on a larger scale, right? So this is just my impressions of what the meta ranking would kind of be like. But I thought it would be fun, so we're going to rank some of the OP17 leaders and some of the other strong leaders coming out of OP16 into this new format. Before we get into that, though, I'm going to shout out the Binge Party TCG guys with this awesome Luffy Sig custom binder. I think I'm going to be giving this away at the end of the month. So enter into the raffle by just liking the video, leaving a comment, and making sure you're subscribed to this channel. If you want to go check out any of their other products, binders, accessories, you can check them out on the link in this description, and you can use my affiliate code BLAZE10 to get a discount and also help support the channel. I very much appreciate it. All right, let's get into it. All right, so the first leader I'm going to start out with over here is going to be the Newgate. I think this leader is pretty decent. It's got a pretty strong defensive capability, but I do think it's overshadowed by a lot of the other decks that we're going to get into in this. So I will put it in B tier. I do think, having basically a free rad beam every turn is really strong, and it is going to be hard to close out the game against this guy when you've got stuff like the Newgate 10 drop that's coming down, buffing them. A lot of these red cards that are buffing the leader quite a bit, and then being able to having to swing into that with also the additional counter that the leader is going to be able to use pretty freely here will be very annoying in a lot of situations, but I don't think it can quite close the game as aggressively as, like, for example, the red ace from OP16, which I think is going to be taking, a lot of the support cards that this Whitebeard got and is going to, in a lot of cases, be just putting it to better use with the ability to grant rush on a lot of these bodies. So coming down, still getting the effect of raising the leader power, not as much counter, but you're ending the game much more quickly and aggressively, which I do think makes this leader get a little bit overshadowed, if I'm being honest. So for that reason, we are going to put the Newgate into B tier. Moving on to the yellow Linlin, I'm skipping over rocks for right now because I kind of need to put my thoughts on that deck together a little more. This one's interesting. I think that the builds for this are going to vary a lot. I do think it's got the potential to be like an A tier leader, but I'm not sure I'm like fully convinced yet, because I think there's ways to kind of play around this deck that will make it difficult. And I think the different strategies with Linlin, using more of the kind of package with all of the thriller slop and all of the constant triggers versus the more OP17 Linlin package, are two very different play styles that are going to be very different to play into if you're not kind of used to both of them and having some experience with both of them. So I do think this is a deck that is going to catch a good number of people off guard pretty hard, and so you will definitely win games with that. I don't know if that necessarily makes it A tier. I feel like it's more towards B tier. I am going to put it in A tier for now because I do believe it is significantly stronger than the Newgate. I think we'll kind of see it maybe get pushed down, though, depending on how big of an A tier we end up with. After that, definitely want to put the OP17 Elbaf Luffy in front of her in A tier, though, for sure. I think this leader is pretty interesting, pretty fun. I kind of like the play style, and I think it's very flexible. It's got like a nice toolbox. If you're running a lot of the 2-drops, at least, I think that there's definitely some room for deck building diff here. And I do think it's also a play style that can be just like very annoying to deal with and can kind of adjust pretty easily to different, matchups. And I think this leader's solid all around. I think this is just a very solid leader. I've been enjoying playing it quite a lot. I think it's going to be pretty solidly A tier. After that, we do have the Shanks. I think everybody knows where this leader's going. This leader's going straight into S tier. This thing, I have not played it personally, but I have played against it enough to recognize that, man, this thing's going to be an absolute menace. I really don't look forward to having to constantly play into this guy. The ability to tap everything, the ability to freeze so much, the combination of green support that it has from older sets with the new package, whether you're going more into the Slash build or more into the Red-Haired Pirates build, I think they're both really good. I think the Slash build is a little faster and a little scarier sometimes than the Red-Haired build. But I do think the Red-Haired build just has the ability to really like shut the game down, clear your board, freeze your board, very consistently just be hard to interact with, put up anti-removal, just do a lot of stuff that can really slowly flip the game to a point where in the late game, kind of up against this kind of inevitable doom that comes. And the 10 cost Shanks, obviously everyone is familiar with the card, I'm sure, if you're watching a video like this. But yeah, I mean, the ability to rest the entire board, rest every blocker, and then untap 2, swing 12k with Rush, absolutely insane. I mean, that card alone can just come down and win games for sure. But then you pair it with all the stun it has, stuff like the Lucky Roo, kind of giving it both the Bonnie effect and the ability to like freeze on top of that, basically for free. It's just really hard to deal with. You can get through it. It is possible, but it definitely feels like very solidly at the top of tier 1. I'm not going to say it's a tier 0 deck. I don't think it's tier 0. I hope it's not tier 0, but it's very, very much at the top of tier 1, in my opinion. This deck is extremely powerful with all of the green support kind of adding up over time now. Now, speaking of leaders that I think are going to be towards the top, I tried to do a video for this leader. I tried to make you guys a Rocks video. I wasted a bunch of time on it. I am absolutely horrible at playing this deck. It is so not my speed. But that being said, what it has the potential to do, it's either here at the very, very top of A tier, or it's in S tier. And I think the difference, I think this is a deck where it literally goes from like, it could be like a B tier deck all the way up to an S tier deck. And I think it's really going to come down to like the pilot, the deck building, the ability to execute on the potential of how good this leader has the potential to be with the card pool that it has of what we've seen so far. It's got so many strong tools. It's got the ability to kind of like shut down your aggression with stunning. It's got the ability to minus your characters and swing into board pretty favorably. It's got the ability to get tons and tons of cards, get tons and tons of options to be super, super reactive. It's got bottom deck removal. It's got just so many options that if you're the kind of player that can keep track of like all the cards in your deck and you know what you have the ability to draw into to deal with different situations, the toolbox that the deck provides seems super strong. Obviously, it is all bricks, which feels like it could be like this major Achilles heel weakness of it. And I do think that's one of the harder things to pilot around is like prioritizing your tempo and how you can affect the opponent's tempo versus establishing stuff like the stage, stuff like the Lin, stuff like the Newgate, and give yourself the ability to have more defensive capabilities and have more cards that give you the ability to discard your bricks for counter, and how to like effectively defend those and get the most use out of them that you can. But if you're somebody who can like figure all that stuff out and figure out the sequencing, for me the thing that makes this deck weird is just the sequencing of how stuff works. I've always kind of like had an issue with that with blue decks, with like the top decking and stuff. If you saw the video I did with Min Hootie, you know, the like flipping it and then revealing it to the other person and then taking two, and then like while you're swinging, pitching, and just the sequence of like how the deck works, the rhythm of the deck is something that some people are really going to tap into and they're going to be really comfortable with it and they're going to really excel with it. But other people are going to really bounce off of and have a hard time getting into the rhythm of it. That's more the camp that I fall into. This deck really does feel like kind of Teach-esque in that way, of where I like the concept of it on paper a lot, but when I go and get my hands on it, the feel of it is something that just doesn't agree with me. So I am going to put this at the bottom of S tier for now. And I think this is really like a pilot diff deck here. I think if you're good with rocks, you can do really good with rocks. Next up, we got Kaido. Kaido, this is my favorite deck of the bunch. I'm a purple player, so unsurprisingly, purple and black are my two favorites, right? So the Luffy and the Kaido are my two favorites. I struggle to see which one I would put at the top of A tier. I think one of these two decks is at the top of A tier for me, and I think I am going to put the Kaido at the top of A tier. I think it does edge out the Luffy just a tiny bit by like how much it can do now that we have revealed so many of the new like ramping tools. I think the Big Mom is super strong in this deck. I think the Kaidos are great. I do think it actually struggles a little bit into Luffy with the fact that it's not negating the cost. So like when you're targeting a 6 cost and then you're negating the effect of it, it's not negating the effect of it raising its own cost with the cards in here, because it's not targeting base cost. So it has to like target off of the current cost, which is then being raised by the effect. So you can't negate the effect, which does make this matchup a little awkward. I think it does really good into rocks. I think it can squeak out wins against Shanks. We'll see how consistently. It's been not horrible for me, but also not great either. Probably less than 50-50, probably like 45, something like that. I do think it can beat Lin a lot of the time, and I do think, you know, it does pretty well into a lot of the other decks because, again, it does have like just good options. I think it just, the leader effect being both defensive and aggressive when it comes to trading into board makes it strong. I think it has a lot of tools to get up to that 10 Don, where it then just kind of starts snowballing these big bodies that get really hard to deal with. I think this is a deck where you got to kind of take care of it, or it's going to eventually snowball and roll over you, even if you are playing something like Luffy that has some kind of inherent advantages in it. Except for Shanks. I think this deck's late game is just so strong. With Shanks, you're kind of ignoring so much of the defensive capability of the deck by just being able to tap down and freeze the blocker. The blocker almost feels not worth playing, and it's one of the strongest cards in the deck. And then also, yeah, just being able to freeze any character, like the fact that you're so reliant on playing these big bodies out, and then they just immediately get frozen, and like the effect of the big body is really the only benefit you get from them, which is really just like Dawn recursion and stuff. It does feel really rough and like very inherently disadvantaged in the late game against Shanks, which, yeah, makes it difficult when it's such a late game oriented deck, I think. But I do still think it's really strong overall, and I would still put it at the top of A tier. After that, we are going to have Mihawk. I think this deck probably deserves to be an S tier. Now, I haven't tested with Mihawk a lot, but if you look at the rest of S tier right now, you've got 2 slash leaders, and one of them is one that, you know, this deck can inherently just utilize a lot of the support for, because it's so generic. So all the good green stuff is also making Mihawk just very strong. I'm not sure if it'll work out to being stronger or slightly less strong than Shanks. I think, you know, being able to just negate so much of the value of a deck like Kaido immediately with Shanks, you know, the Luffy, even rocks, like this effect just ignores cost entirely. And with Mihawk, you know, setting up more Dawn, it does allow you to play more aggressively. It does allow you to have more flexible options in your playstyle, but it just doesn't get like the inherent almost free value that Shanks does. So I am going to put it under Shanks for now, but I do think it's worth keeping in mind that this deck is playing kind of an advantage into both of these other S tier decks just by the slash power boost that it inherently will like get in these matchups. So that might push it over depending on how these top cuts and stuff kind of work out. Okay, I do want to put Enel up here as well. I do think Enel is probably somewhere in the A tier, maybe towards the back of it. I think it's a pretty strong deck, and I think it does kind of bump Big Mom out of here down to the B tier. I feel like it does struggle a little bit into like rocks, for example. I think it can struggle a good bit into Shanks, obviously, because, you know, your big bodies are once again just getting kind of countered forever. I think this deck is still around though, and I think it is another like pilot diff deck. As much as I wish I was good at this deck, I'm just not. I think I'm kind of like mediocre at the deck in a way that people who have really locked in and really like done well on this deck are probably still going to be able to find success with it, just because it is such a flexible play style into so many matchups. And now that yellow isn't going to be as oppressive as it was before, I do think it's going to have a little more room to operate without getting shut down by just like ultra polarized matchups. And on that note, I do think Nami is probably pretty far down in this list now. This deck just kind of isn't able to get as much value off of a lot of its plays as these other decks, and I think that they'll kind of end up outpacing it in a way that I don't think it's a bad deck, but I think it's a lot less well positioned than it has been previously. There's just so much freeze, and this deck's weakness has like always been getting hit with freeze stuff. A deck that's very difficult to interact with their board, right? So what's the answer to that then? The answer is to stun their board, and you know, you don't have to kill it because you get punished for killing it. So you just don't do that anymore. And I think that just does put this deck in a worse position. All right, talking about Red Ace, I do think this is a deck that is going to take some people by surprise. I think it's actually pretty strong, maybe even like up here. Just the support that it gets from the new gate, being able to rush out so much of that stuff, I think is like really good. I might even put it above Enel. This is kind of tough for me though. Like it feels a little unproven still, but yeah, I definitely do think it belongs to be probably either bottom of A tier or like top of B tier, one of these two. I am going to put it bottom of A tier though, because I do think this deck is just very inherently powerful, and it just had an effect that wasn't like fully being utilized by the cards that it had previously. And I think now, yeah, just the combination of this having the new gate in it that you can play out for 6 and rush, that alone seems just very strong to me. So I would put it in A tier. And then I think Teach is also in kind of a weird spot. I think it's still pretty strong, and I think it is still like a very pilot diff kind of deck here. I'm definitely not an expert on Teach, but I do think if Enel is less well positioned and Nami is less well positioned, it does just kind of inherently bring this deck down a peg. And yeah, I would put that in B tier personally. And then let's throw Goofy in there as well. I think Goofy is probably demoted to like either a B or a C tier leader. I think the matchups are pretty tough for it. Stuff that can rest down your characters and then just swing into it and trade very easily makes this deck pretty tough, I think, to get there with in comparison to these other green decks. You definitely can like hit a little bit of stall on them, but it's just going to be really hard to compete with what these 3 decks up here are doing. I think into the rest of a lot of these, it's not as bad. I just don't see a whole lot of favorable matchups, except maybe I think it'd be pretty good into Lin, I would expect. But it's just a less well-suited meta for Goofy to thrive in, if you ask me. And that's kind of what I've heard from some of the people I know who have put more time onto the deck than I have, because I really only played it for a couple of weeks. But yeah. Okay, guys, well, that's pretty much it for me. This is just my basic cursory take on what I think the OP17 meta might shake out like. Obviously, we still have a couple more weeks to go, and it's going to be a couple weeks into it until we see really what things probably end up looking like. This is just kind of my best guess, but I think it's fun to kind of predict. And yeah, let me know down in the comments what you guys think, which leaders you think are gonna do better or worse than what I'm saying here, and what your takes are for the upcoming meta. It's a very exciting time in the card game, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Till then, peace.